Hey everyone, welcome back to another Rich Has an Opinion, and this time again somebody else has asked me for an opinion. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Leaflet, who gave me the suggestion for my last video, which was the 3 wishes. This time it's a shout out to Maddie Ashworth, who said I should do my favourite TV shows and movies. So, let's jump into it. First of all, my apologies Leaflet, I meant to give you a shout out in the last video, but I was that busy trying to rush the production, I completely forgot about it. My apologies, but thank you very much, and I will be covering the other topics you suggested as well. I do also have a couple of topics to cover from my wife, but they're a bit spicy, so we'll see how we go with those. Let's start with TV shows. In all honesty, I can't remember the last time I watched any amount of live TV, so we're kind of going to have to scratch this one off the list, but I will touch on some of my favourite TV shows. Those being Battlestar Galactica, obviously the new remake, not the classic 80s version. Deep Space Nine, Red Dwarf, Top Gear, Space Above and Beyond, which if you haven't seen that series, you need to. Firefly, and I think we're getting a general idea of the kind of stuff I like. So yeah, I had satellite TV for a while and realised the only thing I was watching it for was the movies on demand and the live news, and most of the live news I can get off internet websites, which is generally where I get my news from these days anyway. So I got rid of my satellite TV and signed up to a very popular subscription service that starts with an N and ends in an X. So I spent a bit of time refreshing the suggestions for me, just to see what would come up based on the algorithm of what I've been watching over the past, well, God knows how many years. And we can pretty much narrow it down to 3 different types of movie. And that's it. I was kind of worried that would make me look very narrow-minded. But 2 of them, yes. The other one, way out on the other side. So, let's have a delve into it and see how we can figure out how I think. Well, somebody's got to anyway. So the first thing that popped up mainly was anything from the MCU and the DC universe. I love my superhero movies, they're fantastic. The next thing that popped up was anything that is fantasy and sci-fi. That's where I realised most of the movies that I'm watching for the escapism. I'm not bothered about fantastic acting or period dramas or horrors or thrillers. Basically what it boils down to is explosions, car chases, star destroyers, lightsabers and superpowered heroes flying around or running very fast. So looking at 3 and 4 on the list, I realised I'm kind of getting into a pattern on what else I'm watching. First thing I noticed, I'm watching a lot of documentaries, specifically documentaries from World War II. I also saw a documentary on LA 92. And the city of Los Angeles went through some rough times in 92, and I feel them. But everything I've been watching about the World War II documentaries has included actual footage from the war. And number 4 on the list, funny enough, is films that started out as documentaries or whatever and turned into effectively reenactments of war scenarios. Films like 6 Days, 13 Hours, Black Hawk Down and Act of Valor. If you don't know any of them, Black Hawk Down is the story of some special forces operators and rangers who were in Mogadishu and ended up in a, shall we say, really bad situation. 6 Days is the story of the Iranian embassy siege when the SAS first actually revealed themselves to the world by storming the Iranian embassy. Act of Valor actually started off as a recruiting tool for the Navy SEALs, but as it progressed and they started doing more, they realised they could turn this into a feature film. So the actual operators in Act of Valor are actual operators, which is why people were saying, why can't these guys act? Because they're operators. Which is why the action scenes are just so freaking awesome, because for them it's just a training day on easy mode. And finally, 13 Hours is the story of how a bunch of ex-military guys who are now CIA contractors spent 13 hours protecting a secret CIA base in Libya after there had been a massive terrorist raid on the American embassy in Libya, in which they'd actually gone in and tried to rescue as many people as they can. They rescued many of the consulate staff. Unfortunately, the ambassador himself didn't make it. So that's my completely shameless plug for 4 great movies I love on the streaming service. I mentioned that earlier, and incidentally, I'm not getting paid for any of those plugs. As I said earlier as well, anything that's got MCU or DC Universe stamped on it, I'm all over it. Love that to pieces. As you've probably guessed by now, I love military movies, but they have to be realistic. If they're not realistic, no, not interested, go away. If you can't make a realistic military movie, then you have no idea on the source material you're taking it from, in which case you are insulting the people who have been in the military. So my other 2 favourite types of film are fantasy and sci-fi. So let's break them up, and we'll start with fantasy. So first of all, let's define fantasy. To me, fantasy is anything that is sort of based back in medieval days, or that involves magic and dragons that may be set in modern day, or again back in medieval type days. Now these are some of my favourite films from that genre as I describe it, in no particular order. Lord of the Rings series, The Hobbit series, Labyrinth, Van Helsing. So you kind of get the idea of the stuff I like. Things like Conan, Clash of the Titans, Dracula, Priest, that kind of thing. Thoroughly enjoy it all. But my favourite of all from that era has got to be a film called Willow, which, if you don't know Willow, then you're clearly not as old as me. It starred Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis. And the previous time we saw Warwick Davis in a film, he was dressed as a furry, using a rock to beat the crap out of a stormtrooper on the forest moon of Endor. Next for me is sci-fi. Sci-fi is quite simply described as any film set in the future or set sort of modern day, but that involves technology we don't currently have access to. Again, lots of excellent films from this genre. Things like Pacific Rim, Waterworld, Oblivion, Battle Los Angeles, the Terminator series. Lots to choose from. But then it comes down to the main 2 big ones on sci-fi. But just before I get into that, one I have to mention is Blade. I'm not quite sure where that sits. Whether that should be sitting in sci-fi or fantasy. I suppose more fantasy from the way I've described it. But there we go. Couple more honourable mentions from the sci-fi genre. You have Battleship, you have Total Recall, both the remake and the original, and of course the original Robocop. Don't get me wrong, I do like the remake of Robocop, but if you actually watch that film closely, in the remake he never actually kills anyone. It's all just robots. Where in the original film, the body count on that is disgusting. As you should have guessed by now, what I'm looking for in a movie is escapism. What I'm looking for is big explosion, huge mechs fighting each other, which is why I probably should have mentioned the Michael Bay Transformers series earlier. You know, I'm not so much bothered about the interactions between 2 characters in their story arc in a 15-second scene that the movie critics keep bringing on about. What I'm interested about is how enjoyable do I find this film, and is it giving me the escapism I want? Basically, I'm not bothered about story arcs. I'm not bothered about a fantastic plot. I just need a plot that moves it along. What I want is big spectacles. What I want to see in a movie is fantastic scenes, one after the other. The MCU delivers this, and they also deliver it with a great plot as well, which is a bonus. But a lot of the other movies I've mentioned don't have a great plot, they don't have great acting, but my god, They have some damn good action scenes, and they also have some big mechs fighting each other. Or they have a lot of fantastic sword fights. Or they have a lot of explosions, car chases. Even the Fast and Furious films, they're great. I'm sorry, I seem to be losing my voice there for a second. But yeah, when it comes down to sci-fi, there is only ever going to be two big hitters. And that is Star Trek and Star Wars. Now, a lot of fans will say they love both. I'm sure they do. But in reality, they love one more than the other. Now, Star Wars fans bang on about how they've had 11 movies and a TV series and it's sold millions of merchandise all around the world. And Star Trek fans, rightly so, come back with this and say, well, we've had 12 movies so far and 9 television series, all of which has had more than one season. So when it comes down to the big two, either Star Trek or Star Wars, one set of fans is right and the other set is wrong. And Star Trek fans are absolutely, utterly wrong. Star Wars is where it all is. That's my favourite set of movies. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this little insight to Rich Has an Opinion. This time it was my opinion on films. If there's anything else you'd like me to put an opinion on, drop it in the comments below. Please hit a subscribe, it helps me out more than you'll ever know. If you like what I do, like and tell me why. If you don't, dislike and tell me why. But either way, please hit that subscribe. Thank you.